Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Morgan live stream here on Facebook, on YouTube. We
That's
are
it.
about to give you Balls and Brew, the flagship sports podcast here on our network. We call it Balls and Brew because, frankly, we talk about sports that involve balls, and we do it the way you do when you're sitting around with your buddies having a couple of brews. That's the reason for the name. I will serve as your affable host. My name is Rod Morgan. Thank you very much for choosing to spend some of your time either live with us this evening or later on the podcast or YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. The man making all of this happen. Quite frankly, I would just open up a Google Doc and talk into it if Jimmy wasn't around, and that would be about my contribution to this podcast. So, James Thomas Jamriska, the executive producer of this podcast. Hello.
You speak the truth, Rod. RodThoughts.com. Happy to be here.
Man, there'd be some wild thoughts on there. Maybe even some thoughts I had one time in my life about our next guest joining us from down there in Bloomington, Indiana. He is the oldest man I know. Quite frankly, he's the oldest man you've ever heard of. It's Chris King. Chris, hello.
What is up, fellas? It is about time we talk about the best of the NFC and possibly the best of the NFL. Happy to be back here tonight.
Look out. Chris has got his Cowboys hat on. He is excited. Frankly, I would have liked him to have worn a Cowboy hat, but he does have a Cowboys baseball hat on. We'll go with that. Our football handicapper is, of course, joining us because, frankly, you want some good information on this podcast. You come for Jimmy's stellar production. You come for my stellar charisma and my great one-liners. And frankly, you also come to fade Jimmy. Let's be real about that on this podcast. The track record of that is strong. And you come to, quite frankly, scratch your head when Chris King says something. But Williams, you listen to him, you make the plays that he's telling you, and he's here. Josh, hello.
What's up, boys? Me and Chris might be going head to head tonight. I was high on the Cowboys last year to win the division. They won the division this year, not so much. Spoiler alert.
Look out. Williams dropping the spoilers in his intro. That's how into football he is. He doesn't even say hello really to the rest of us. He doesn't come up with some little nugget about what's been going on in his life. He gets right to the football. That's how you know he is the man. I am going to make one quick sojourn at the top. The same reason that I've made a sojourn at the top of the last couple of weeks, because quite frankly, we talk about basketball on this podcast a lot, and we would be remiss if we didn't just spend a minute or two. And this is the first question I'm going to ask. Because you three jokers, you three turkeys, continuously talked about not watching the Olympics. Please tell me you had your televisions tuned to NBC at 3:15 on Saturday for the gold medal game between France and the United States. Jimmy, I'm going to you first because please tell me you at least did.
Sure, I did. I think Jason Tatum played very well. I think Tyrese Halliburton had a great game. It was a terrific win for the United States. No, yeah, we watched it. The kids watched it, had a blast. It was a game that was so cool. There are two things I will never forget. I will never forget that shot of Wembanyama trying to block Curry's shot, that beautiful picture that should be on posters, and if people still do that, everywhere. And then the fact that the only person on earth that can shoot the three-pointer that Steph Curry shot with LeBron James and Kevin Durant wide open, shot it and made it. That was amazing.
I love that you pointed out that picture because, yes, the Wembanyama picture is great. You see his long, freakish arms, and you see Steph Curry shooting over the top of it, and you wonder how in the world is it possible. But that shot of Steph Curry that far behind the three-point line with two dudes way up in the air putting up a good contest and possibly the two other greatest players of his generation wide open on the wing, and he doesn't pass it to him, and none of us are mad at him because he hit the shot. I agree with you, Jimmy. I've seen the Indiana Hoosiers win a national championship when I was a young boy at 7, and I have a lot of memories of that. I have seen the Colts win a Super Bowl, have a lot of memories of that. I've seen the Boston Celtics win the championship numerous times in my life, couple when I was a real youngster, and then 2 later in life. But my favorite game, the game that had me on the most edge of my seat, was that Olympic game. Chris, did you tune in?
So due to work constraints, I had to watch the replays later that night. That being said, I watched both gold medal matches, the women and the men's games. The women's game I thought was a little bit more thrilling, especially in that second half. To me, I thought that game was rather impressive. I am one of these naysayers, a negative Nancy, when it comes to the USA men's basketball team. I don't think we need to be relying on Steph Curry to make a shot like that to win a gold medal. All right. We should have a better team than everybody else. We don't have to rely on some superhuman heroics to win the game. Am I wrong?
No, not necessarily wrong, but I still think that you want the same players that were on the court that you are, sort of negatively speaking about here. But your overall point of we want a team, we need some camaraderie, we need plays, we need a system. I can't disagree with you
I
there.
think we had the right players, Rod. I don't have any gripe with the players.
Well, I mean, I have a gripe. I think Jason Tatum should have played more, but that could just be my Celtics screen there.
I don't. That's part of what my real problem is, Rod. It's not with the players that are on the squad. It's with the coaching and the system set up to coach this team in international competition. Like it was a whole lot different back in 2012 when we really started taking it seriously again, and now we're not. And look what it almost happened. Like 2 games in a row, we needed superhuman heroics to win. And that's not what USA basketball should be when it comes to international competition. It just isn't.
I don't disagree with you, but I think that possibly maybe that speaks to the world catching up to the United States a little bit more than you're allowing credit for there, Chris.
No, Rod. They are, because there's definitely a whole lot more NBA players on the world stage, like on these for these other countries, and it does build up competition, which I do like. However, I have a real issue with coaching. You want me to come out and say it? Yeah, I don't think Kerr should be a coach again for the USA. I think he's a bit overrated. He's starting to become the Belichick of the NBA to me right now.
Guys, but
What?
wow. Listen,
I
was
mean,
just trying
first
to
of
have
all,
fun.
Bill Belichick sitting on the sideline saying, "What is Chris throwing stuff at me for?" First of all, he's
Overrated.
younger than you, so calm down. You shouldn't beat up on your little people. All right, Chris. I'm sorry. Only won 7 championships. Only
Trying
won
to have a
4,
fun
whatever.
Olympics
Overrated.
discussion. What in the world's happened, Williams?
What the hell?
Is my microphone not working? Is my microphone not working? No one can hear me, can they?
Oh, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
You're just on a little delay right now.
Oh,
but
all
that's
right.
okay.
Because literally nobody was saying anything. I thought no one could.
Well,
hear
because
me.
we can't understand.
All I
what
was trying to do is have a fun Olympics
said.
discussion.
Williams doesn't know anything about basketball. So Steve Kerr is a coach, Williams.
College basketball, I'm all for. I will give you a hot take here.
Oh,
Steph Curry.
What?
Yeah. Steph has changed the game. He's ridiculous. He stayed with the Warriors his whole career. He's got he's going to retire a Warrior. He's got an MVP in the finals. Those Olympic games, Steph is now top 5 all time. He's top 5 all time. He's unbelievable. He's changed the game, man. And I don't care where he's in my starting 5 all time. He's unbelievable what he's done. Unbelievable.
I don't know if I've ever seen anybody shoot the ball better than Steph Curry, but that's a pretty bold statement. But I don't know. Listen, I don't want to chop that up here. I just was trying to give flowers to the United States basketball team. I just was trying to say it was an
messed
incredible
that up,
game to
Rod.
watch on TV. Yeah, I also at one point wanted to just throw flowers to Noah Eagle for absolutely slaying the broadcast of that and the women's game and the entire basketball tournament. I mean, NBC put this dude on your biggest game. Let's go. Give Dwayne Wade all the money to be your color analyst because I guess he's a business entrepreneur and doesn't want to do it full time. Dwayne, we need you. Everybody else in the game, who I'm not going to trash because I like most of them, but they take it too seriously. We need Dwayne Wayne's energy. Noah Eagle was awesome. Let's get to the football. All right. That's what people really tune in for this time of year. And I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get to the Cowboys and the Bears. But because I believe the Bears will be the superior team, we will get to them second. So we're going to start in the NFC East. Williams, what do you got for us there?
What's up, man? Just a few lines here. Philly over under 10.5, shaded over -130. Dallas 10.5, shaded under -180. Washington 6.5, shaded over -130, and the Giants, I think 5.5, shaded under -135.
Oh, the Giants. Listen, real quick, can we just say, oh, the Giants? Let's just pour one out for the Giants. A couple years ago, we were all excited about Dayball, right? We were all excited about Danny Dimes. And then last year, we had Tommy Cutlets playing quarterback, and it's still completely hopeless in New York. Pour one out for the Giants.
Yeah, this is a team that's spending at a top 5 rate this year at quarterback, and that's killing the ability to sign other talent elsewhere. And the spot where I feel it's going to rear its ugly head the most is in the secondary, as New York is spending bottom 10 money on quarterbacks and next to last on safeties. So that was a big reason why the Giants took a safety in the second round, Tyler Newman from Minnesota. They gave up 85 sacks last year, second most all time. Danny Dimes got an ACL injury. They had the least amount of explosive plays in the last 2 years. That's why they drafted the most explosive player in the draft with LSU's Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. If you're going to take anybody on this Giants team in fantasy, I would suggest taking Malik Neighbors. His explosive rate is off the chart, man. This guy had a catch rate of 5.7% above expected. And get this, he produced 22% more yards after the catch than expected. Those numbers are exquisite. Neighbors is going to have a better and longer career than Odell Beckham Jr. did in New York.
If he can
Well, you're
stay
just throwing
healthy,
that out. You're throwing out a hot take like that. I thought you were all facts and figures guy. What are you doing? All of a sudden at the end here, you're just throwing out a hot take about Malik Neighbors. What's happening right now? What is happening to this episode? I thought I was sitting down with Jimmy, Williams, and Chris. I thought I had an understanding of how these things normally go, and you guys are just like, my head is spinning right now. What is happening?
Anybody? Just wait till you see Malik Neighbors, man. He's awesome.
You're not
You're
wrong
the
about
one-
Neighbors, but we're also not wrong that we need to pour one out for the Giants and then probably never talk about them again until we get to like the gesture of the week, maybe.
So, Williams, you mean to tell me that you don't think people should be drafting Devin Singletary, Eric Gray, or Tyron Tracy Jr., the depth chart for the Giants at running back right now? You don't see either one of those guys lighting it up?
No, I don't. I mean, they are projected to face a bottom 10 schedule of run Ds. I mean,
Kinda,
but
that's what happens when you stink the year before. That's the way the NFL works.
yeah, but can Devin Singletary really capitalize on that?
No, of course he can.
I'm not sure.
Jimmy, do you have anything to say about the Giants, or can we move on to another team?
let's move on to another team.
All right, I just wanted to give you an opportunity here, Jimmy. I feel like there's a lot of us yelling tonight, and like you're just having to come in
I
there.
can't understand what's going on tonight. I'm done.
We're in trouble. You're the producer. If you can't figure it out, then what chance do the listeners have? Williams, move us on to another team in the NFC East here. Let's save the Cowboys for last. Who else you got? You want to do the Washington football team, or I guess they're called the Commanders now, or the I just blanked on the
Eagles.
other team.
Commandos.
Philadelphia Eagles.
The Commandos.
The Commandos.
Yeah, the Commandos stole the Cowboys defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn. He went to DC to take the head coaching job. Guess who had the worst turnover margin last season? It was Washington at -14. I think Quinn is going to help that team with the turnover margin. I mean, and you got our buddy Cliff Kingsbury as OC. The horizontal raid is back in Washington.
Have you guys ever seen Cliff Kingsbury's house? It's immaculate. Have you guys ever seen his house? I mean, that is a living room. You guys remember that?
That's the best thing about Kingsbury. The biggest criticism of him is how predictable his offenses are. From 2019 to 2022, his record in September and October is fine, 18-13-1, but his record in November, December, and January is only 10-26. So he just does not make enough adjustments. And when Kingsbury was with Zona for those 4 years, they ran 1,491 no huddle plays. The next closest team was 865. So Washington should get considerably more plays on offense this year. Now, the quality of those plays, that's a whole other story.
So basically what you're saying here is we have an ARR bump, right? An after Riverboat Ron situation where when you get Riverboat Ron out of your building, things will probably start to go better for your overall football team. Is that essentially what you're saying here for the Commandos, as Chris likes to call them?
I would agree with that, but Brandon Thorne of ETR ranks this Commanders offensive line dead last in the NFL. And this team hasn't had a winning season in 12 years. I know that brings a smile to Chris's face. And the reason why Jaden Daniels won the Heisman last year was it was a great O-line at LSU. It was a fantastic wide receivers, and it was a manageable schedule. And Daniels never really had to process after the snap because his wide receivers were winning so quickly off the line of scrimmage.
And because Brian Kelly literally would have executed him on live TV had he not just followed his exact play. We as Notre Dame fans understand the iron fist that Brian Kelly rules with.
Yeah. I mean, and it wasn't just Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas at LSU. When Daniels was at Arizona State, he had Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall to throw the ball to. So he's had elite pass catchers every stop of the way. And when Daniels has had to go up in competition throughout his career, it hasn't gone well for him. He wasn't good the first 3 quarters versus FSU. He wasn't good against A&M. He was benched versus Georgia. He takes a lot of sacks. So, I mean, he's 24 years old. Yes, he does have a lot of athletic ability, but this really isn't your prototypical young, big arm, like second pick in the draft QB where we're talking about here. So there's also big questions on the offensive line too.
Jimmy, you speak fluent Williams, being his producer now for many years. Like what basic grade do you think that Williams was giving Jaden Daniels there, right? Because we know our guy Williams doesn't really like to fully trash anybody except coaches, right? Coaches he will absolutely go after for making terrible calls, but he does not like going after players. So when Williams speak, what grade did he just give Jaden Daniels there?
C-. Just does enough. Can't really make it to that next level, and he's not actually trash either. So he's just kind of right in the middle, but on the little lower end of the middle. I'm thinking C-, and I think he's going to have the Washington football team last in that division.
Wow, man, Joe House, buddy, if you're listening, shout out to you. But we're sorry that we don't have high hopes for your Commandos. Chris, your Commandos thoughts? Not about the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but the Washington team.
Darn it. I will say this, that it's good news for Giants fans. I guess it's good news for Washington fans. Jimmy is picking them to be last via his curse. They have a chance to win the division now.
Not listen. It's one team a year that I'm extremely wrong about. That's usually true. Los Angeles Chargers. This year it's going to be the Browns.
Chris, I was going to say that is true, though. Jimmy usually does like to attack the West Coast, right? Like it's a whole like Midwest, like I want to live by the ocean, but your real estate is too expensive. I could never be out there. It's just like it's a whole, he has this thing for the elites of the West Coast, and that's why he tries to take down their football teams.
That's why there's a history.
I'm all in on the Rams. All in on the Rams this year, too. Nothing can go wrong with the Rams.
There's a history of Jimmy being wrong in football, being right in basketball. That's all I'm going to say.
Nice. All right. Let's get on to a team that was riding high a couple of years ago. And then at the end of last year, it all went wrong. A team that had a terrible offseason in the sense of story-wise, right? There was not ever a real good story that came out. You had a whole bunch of people questioning Nick Sirianni. You heard about a whole lot of fights among teammates. Like, Williams, what are we to make of the once mighty Philadelphia Eagles? Are they still mighty despite the fact that maybe every single guy is getting in a car separately and never going out to dinner together, as the old adage goes?
Yeah, they bring in Kellen Moore steps in as the new OC. He's very
Chris, you're familiar with Kellen Moore's work.
Yeah. It's not great.
Not great, Cotton.
He will increase pace, though. He was number 1 in pace with the Chargers last year, and from 2019 to 2022, his offense is ranked 4th, 2nd, 1st, and 2nd in terms of seconds per play. Last year, the Eagles were 18th in seconds per play, and nobody had more no-huddle plays than the Eagles last year. Nobody passed more out of no-huddle offense than the Eagles last year. And they bring in our guy, Fanny Pack Fangio, as defensive coordinator. That is a huge get. And yeah, that should help them on the defensive side of the ball.
I don't know if I've ever pointed this out before, but I'm a big fan of people with 3-letter first names that begin with V. All right. I'm a big fan of that. My son is named Van. I love a good Vic. I love a Van. I love a Viv, right? You give me anybody named 3 letters starting with V, I'm in.
It's a great take, Rod. Fantastic take.
Well, listen, Jimmy, there's a reason I'm the host of the show. You know what I'm saying? Williams, Saquon Barkley, maybe the biggest free agent name in the offseason. Again, running backs have been devalued, and he's a little older and coming off some injuries, but the biggest name maybe to move teams in the offseason, not named Kirk Cousins, was probably Barkley. Do you think this helps the Eagles, or is it weird because they don't really do what Saquon Barkley does?
Yeah, well, he goes from having the 2nd worst run block win rate with the Giants to the number 1 run block win rate with Philly. Now, Jason Kelsey is retired now, but that should still be a top 5 unit in 2024. And Kelsey actually handpicked his replacement out of like 10 different guys in college. So they shouldn't. I mean, they'll slightly downtick at the center position, but it shouldn't be a massive spot. Barkley's elusive rating was not good last year, but I mean, it's tough. He was running behind a trash O line. So, yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with Barkley. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities, and I think the Philly's going to have.
See, because I worry about that, right? Jalen Hurts, the tush push, right? Like I worry about that, right? Like Barkley's not going to get any goal line carries because I mean, like the most successful play in NFL history is that thing, right? But I guess with Kelsey out, maybe they'll try something different.
92.5% success rate. The tush push was.
So let me ask you guys this, because I think this is even bigger than what you guys are bringing into it. Like Kelsey was the legitimate anchor and, for lack of a better term, quarterback of that offense. Like he was calling the shots. Like he knew everything inside and out better than everybody else. Whether or not he handpicked his replacement is fine, but that guy doesn't have that experience. So who takes over that spot? Is this unit going to be as cohesive without him there? I think that's a big issue. And we've already seen issues with the signal caller and a head coach on this team. And I have literally no confidence that they've improved as a whole from last year even.
Chris, I'm going to pick up on what you said there, and I completely agree, right? Jason Kelsey, I think last year was the locker room politician, so to speak, right? I think he kept that room together. I think he kept Hurts and Sirianni together. I think he sort of was a shield for Sirianni, and I think that the most heat on any coach in the NFL to start out the year is Sirianni because of those bad offseason stories and because of the high expectations the Eagles have. And if this team starts out sliding, and in the year 1-6 last year, like they did, I think Sirianni could be out at the middle of the year. I smell trouble in Philadelphia. But you know what else I smell? No, wait, Williams, do you want to circle back here?
Yeah, I think you guys are crazy because Hurts held onto the ball at the 4th highest rate last year. That is going to improve this season under Kellen Moore. Last year, Philly faced a top 10 schedule of pass defenses. They face a bottom 10 schedule of pass defenses this year, and they're spending up on all 5 offensive groups from last season. Philly faces a bottom 5 schedule of rush Ds also. They had the 2nd most lost games to injury in their secondary. And so what does Howie Roseman do? He goes out and gets 2 of the best corners in the draft, Quinion Mitchell from Toledo and Cooper DeJean from Iowa. I think this team is loaded. I think this team is going to easily win the NFC East this year.
Wow. See, this is why you come to this podcast, folks. Williams has hardcore data and research and, evidence to back up his takes. And Chris and I are just talking about vibes, right? You come to the podcast for different reasons. One of us might be right. One of us might be wrong. Actually, that's exactly how it'll work. You can't really have any other scenario. But let's move on to the glory team of the National Football League, America's team, Chris's team. You see it on his hat there. The Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, all that is the Dallas Cowboys drama. Let's go. Williams, what do you got for us?
All right. Dallas is in for a rude awakening this year. They're spending 14 spots lower on the defensive line, 13 spots lower at cornerback, 4 spots lower at safety, and they're spending the 3rd least amount of money on the linebackers. And once McCarthy had like a little birdie in his ear after week 5 last year, he decided to use Dak as a runner more in the red zone. Their red zone efficiency rate went up from 28th to 6th. But Warren Sharp's rankings, this is remember when Dallas had an awesome offensive line? He's ranking this as a bottom 5 offensive line and dead last running back room. The Cowboys had 11 games.
Remind the listeners who the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys is. Remind the listeners who the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys is, because you know what? Nothing like a reunion, baby. Let's go.
Ezekiel Elliott is now the running back for Dallas. I expect them to add another running back. He's actually still a really good short yardage back and pass protector, but he had 1 explosive run last year. 1. So that's a major concern for the Cowboys. They had 11 games versus
not
defenses.
If they don't want to be an explosive offense. It's not, Williams. It's not really a concern if they don't want to be an explosive offense.
They had 11 games last year versus defenses that didn't rank in the top 20. And Dak took advantage of that. He was second in EPA per drop back and third in success rate. But that's not the case this year. And I mean, the Cowboys wasted. They have two guys. If you add DeMarcus Lawrence and Dak, they have two players that are making up 30% of the Cowboys cap this year. The Cowboys wasted those early Dak years back in 16, 17, and 18 when he ranked between the 78th highest paid quarterback in the league up to the 45th highest paid quarterback in the league. And since Dallas never cut him or extended him, they have paid Dak $151 million over the last 5 years. The only player with a bigger cap hit is Russell Wilson. So at the last 3 years, this is the last thing, Cowboys versus non-playoff teams, 25-4. They beat up their bullies. Cowboys versus playoff teams, 12-14.
Chris, the floor is yours, my friend.
So this is what I'm going to start off neutral at first, all right? Because if you're going to listen to anybody, everybody out there needs to listen to Williams, because the NFC hasn't had a back-to-back champion in I don't know how many years. Williams, like 12, 14 years.
NFC East.
Yeah, NFC East champion.
Yeah.
It's been
a while.
forever. Yeah. So the Cowboys, it's against the money for them to repeat. That being said, I am full fan mode this year. All right, guys, get ready, because the Cowboys can do no wrong in my eyes this year.
Because it's Dak's last year? Is that why? Because it's the last hurrah for Dak?
No, because I've been the pragmatic Cowboys fan for way too long. I'm going to enjoy this year. I'm going to live and die by the boys this year. All right, guys? But let me tell you this. No one else in the NFC East has improved. I don't care what Williams' stats says. I don't really believe in the Eagles.
Don't care about the numbers.
Hey, everybody, listen to Williams, but I don't care what Williams said.
But listen, he talks about these guys ranking these offensive lines. We have no idea what the offensive line in Philadelphia is going to look like without Kelsey. We have no idea what the offensive line is going to look like in Dallas
Who are these
without
guys
Tyrone Smith. So we don't know yet until we see them play, and that's why we play the game, Williams. We go and play on Sunday. And you know what the Cowboys do every single year, Williams? We win 11 to 12 games, all right? Everybody's picking them at 10.5. The Eagles at 10.5. If we get to 11 and 12, that's our division. That's our little spot right there again. So give me the Cowboys back to back. All right. We got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. We got one of the best receivers in the league. I don't care who's in the backfield, because we all know it's usually the number 2 back in Dallas that's the best back, and he's going to get the explosive plays anyway. So give me whoever.
So,
Jimmy,
Chris, for the first time,
ahead,
first time in 20 years, 20 years, we're going to go back to back. The last time it was done, 2001 to 2004, the Eagles won 4 consecutive. So 20 years, Chris.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
You know what just happened right there, Jimmy? Chris just cut the promo for The Last Dance, Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. That's exactly what that sounded like to me. That sounded to me like somebody coming to terms with Dak Prescott is completely gone from the Cowboys at the end of this year. That's what it sounded like to me.
Chris, I think one thing that you have to take into consideration here, the Cowboys have to play the AFC North. Not very good. The good news is, though, the 3 road game, or the three of the games are before week 5, so they're not going to really have any cold weather, and then the later game is actually in Dallas against Cincinnati, so you don't have to really worry about that. That's a lucky break there for your Cowboys.
We also get to play the Giants twice and the Redskins twice, and in my eyes, an inferior Eagles team twice. So
what do you guys got, a DeLorean down there in Dallas? How are you going to play the Redskins twice? Do you mean the Commandos?
Yeah, what's going on with that?
Oh, yeah, the Commandos, the Redskins. I'm sorry, guys. Whatever. It's the Washington team.
All right. So Chris says he's got the Cowboys. I am going to take the Cowboys as well. I'm actually going to take the Cowboys as well. I was gassing Chris up there, but I'm taking the Cowboys as well because I don't like the Eagles. It smells to me in Philadelphia. I don't care what Williams says either, to quote Chris King right there. Give me the Cowboys. Jimmy, who do you
Chris
got?
King, I don't care portion of the show. He does not care what Williams says.
Jimmy, and you avoided making a pick here in the NFC East. Who you got?
Yeah, I've got the Eagles going 11-6 and winning the division.
All right. Jimmy and Williams have the Eagles. Boo. Chris and I have the Cowboys. Fun. Speaking of fun, let's move on to the NFC North, but we're going to hold Jimmy and Williams as boys, the Bears, till the end. Let's dispatch with breaking news, sort of, right? As close as we can get on our podcast to breaking news. Hours, well, not really hours, but earlier in the day today of recording, we got news that the Vikings, Glory Boy, their first round pick, the guy they traded up to get, JJ McCarthy, former quarterback of the national championship, Michigan Wolverines, out for the season. I don't know if he was actually going to start the season for the Vikings. I don't know if anybody really thought that JJ McCarthy was going to prop them up and make them a contender in this division. But Williams, how worried should the Vikings be that now they're definitely playing Sam Darnold?
Yeah, we'll get to the over-unders here real quick. Detroit 10.5, shaded over -135. Pack 9.5, shaded over -135. Bears 8.5, shaded over -160. Minnesota 6.5, shaded over -160. Yeah, I mean, I think Kevin O'Connell can have some success with Sam Darnold. They did sign him to a 1-year deal. I mean, Sam Darnold's been 29th or worse in all 5 years with deep ball accuracy rate. But I'll give you this, a silver lining to Darnold's stats here. All previous OCs and coaches of Darnold are out of the league now. So he's never had as good a coach as Kevin O'Connell. And Cousins and Jefferson missed a combined 18 games last year. And somehow Kevin O'Connell had the Vikings in the upper half of the league in early down success rate on offense. He was using the heaviest rates of play action with those backup quarterbacks to try and protect Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, and Jaron Hall. He also used a ton of pre-snap motion. And the O-line was actually surprisingly good last year.
I'll shout out to Josh Dobbs. I'm sorry. I just smiled as soon as you said Josh Dobbs. I forgot all about it, but we had some fun with Josh Dobbs last year, the Dobbsinator. We were all excited when he first went to Minnesota, was lighting it up, and then boy, did it go bad.
The Vikings actually wanted to draft Drake May in the draft, but they couldn't pull off the trade with New England before the draft. They really wanted to take Drake May. He's only 21. They settled for McCarthy, and maybe McCarthy has a better career long-term, but obviously it's going to be tough go this year. On defense, they still have Brian Flores on D. He brought 5 or more pass rushers at the highest rate in the league, blitzed a league high 51% of the time. They traded up to get Dallas Turner. They bring in not Rip Van Winkle, Rod. They bring in Andrew Van Ginkel from Miami on the edge. And so you didn't think you were going to get a Rip Van Winkle shout out. Jimmy's loving it. I can see it in the top left corner here. That's under the radar, really good get for the Vikings pass rush. There's questions about the secondary still. They had a bunch of injuries, but
listen, no, it's fine. Let's dispatch to the Vikings. We're not going to talk about the Vikings very much this year. We're just not. There's 3 pretty good teams in the NFC North. Yeah, that's right. You heard me. 3 pretty good teams in the NFC North. We're going to get to the Bears soon. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions. Everybody was fired up about the Lions last year. Williams, you swore up and down that Ben Johnson would be a head coach starting this year. Well, turns out he's still the offensive coordinator in Detroit. They brought the band back. Continuity in Detroit, a franchise that has been a joke for so long. Expectations are high in Detroit. Chris is shaking his head. He was fired up about the Lions last year. Williams, what can we expect out of the silver and blue this year?
Yeah, man, more of the same. This is the first division title since 1993 for Detroit fans. This was the first playoff win since 1991. They won 2 playoff games after having won just 1 in the previous 65 years combined last year. So, good deal for the Detroit fans to finally be happy about their football team. The biggest pro, you mentioned it, Rod, for the Lions is that they somehow convinced offensive coordinator Ben Johnson to stay for another year. It didn't hurt that he was asking a $1 kajillion for his next head coaching gig. So you may want to watch out for that next year. Since he's taken over the play calling in 2022, if you don't believe me, here are the stats. Detroit is 3rd in the NFL in points per drive. What Johnson does really well is he lines Amon-Ra St. Brown up all over the field. He also finds ways to get the tight ends open. Sam Laporta was a rookie last year. He had the 2nd highest tight end target share in the league. Jamison Williams.
Tight end is back, by the way. Tight end is back, baby.
Jamison Williams is a high ceiling guy. Khalif Raymond's a high floor guy. They have Jahmyr Gibbs. I would advise if you're in any fantasy drafts, if you're in multiple fantasy drafts, try to get at least 1 Detroit positional player on your team. Even Goff. Check this out. Detroit plays 14 of their 17 games in a dome. That is awesome Goff stats right there. You want Jared Goff on your fantasy team if you can get him, or if you can't, try and get Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs or Laporta.
All right, we're going to keep Chris foaming at the mouth for a little bit longer to talk about his lines. Jimmy, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to throw it to you in the way that I do so often, and you're going to give me that look like, what? When you hear Amon-Ra St. Brown, do you think of the movie Night at the Museum ever? Because Amon-Ra is the guy who has the power that makes all the exhibits come to life, and Ben Stiller has to help him solve the mystery at the end of the movie. Do you ever think of that, or am I the only one?
You're the only one. I think of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, actually.
That's a much better movie. That's a much better movie.
That's what I
mean.
think. I actually thought that's where you were going with that.
Well, Jimmy, that was Kali Ma. If you really want to know about Amon-Ra,
yeah, I know, Chris. I understand that. Thank you for clarifying it for everyone.
It was The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. That was the best version of Amon-Ra.
All right. Look, there's also a Mummy with Tom Cruise. And as much as I love Tom Cruise, that's not the best version of the Mummy. The best immersion. See what I did there? Version of the Mummy. Wow. All right, Jimmy, your thoughts on the Lions before we go to Chris.
I think the Lions take a couple steps back this year. I didn't realize it was 14 of 17 in a dome, so their offense is going to be very, very potent. I like that, Colin Williams. But I really think they're just going to be around that 9-8, 8-9 record this year. There's some really tough competition that they have.
Oh, Jimmy, I smell where you're going, and I'm riding that train with you, my friend. We're going to get there soon enough. Chris, go ahead. Your Lions.
Okay, this is Dan Campbell, right? His dogs are going to be there fighting every Sunday, and now you're telling me they got 14 games inside a dome? This was the most exciting offense over the last 2 years, and now they're going to be indoors all season. They're going to be the most exciting offense again this year, and that defense has done nothing but improve. How in the world is this team taking steps back? Like, they're winning this division again.
All right, Chris just gave away his pick there. Williams, what do you got on the Packers? Because people are, or throw it back there to the Lions one more time and then give us the Packers thoughts, because people are riding high up there in Cheeseland as well.
Yeah, the first 10 weeks of the season, no one has an easier schedule than the Lions.
How is that possible? The team made it to the NFC Championship game.
They're just scheduling shenanigans again.
It's about time they get some breaks in the NFL. All right?
I have them winning like 7 of their games
forever.
You always want to see Adam Pearce get investigated in a made-up sport. This is a real sport. You don't want to see an investigation into how an NFC Championship team gets one of the easiest schedules?
I'm a fan, Rod. Let Detroit cook.
Look at you. Your fandom is blinding you, Chris. I used to like it when you were just a mean dude all the time. Williams.
Yeah, and before we get to the Packers, I'm going to circle back. Another reason why I like Philly, second best net rest advantage this year. You know how big a thing I think.
You were riding the net rest train. That is your new stat this year. You have a new stat for the people every year, and this year you were riding that one.
I love it. Chris hates it. All right, on to the Packers. Hey, the Packers were the youngest team since 1970 to win a playoff game last season. From the second half of the season on, Jordan Love was second in EPA. This is why I loved the Pack over 7.5 wins last year. I asked all of you, what if Jordan Love is good? And you guys all threw me out. You almost threw me out of the pod. You couldn't believe I even asked that question. Well, I was looking like a doofus the first 8 games because he was horrific, but somehow he managed to turn it around.
And I'm sure I didn't point that out at any point during the first 8 games of the season. I'm sure I didn't make that a point of clarification at all.
It turns out the last 8 games, this guy was pretty good. And so the Packers had 179 pass plays last year where there was only 1 or 2 wide receivers on the field. I think that increases this year after losing Aaron Jones. The goal-to-go situations, the Packers scored a touchdown on 95% of their drives. That's probably going to regress this year. And the reason Love got better was because they started calling shorter passes. That will probably regress just because that number is unsustainable. So the first 9 weeks of the season, the Packers don't play a top 14 secondary if you go by conglomerate rankings of Sharp Football Analysis and PFF. So it's possible that Green Bay gets out to an early start here.
I like the Packers an awful lot. I think they're putting together a team like Brian Gutekunst, right, who's been vilified at times, right, by Aaron Rodgers, and then Aaron Rodgers went ahead and vilified himself and kind of made Brian Gutekunst look a little bit better. And then you look at the talent that Packers team has. That's mostly a homegrown team. A lot of young guys. I like what's there, but I don't like what's there as much as I like what's going on in Chicago, baby. The Windy City, the monsters of the Midway. But now it's all about offense in Chicago. Williams, what's going on with your Bears?
Yes, This is all about the offense, baby. Since 1985, the Bears have had 44 different quarterbacks. That's the second most over that time frame. And it hasn't been since 2009, where Smoking Jay Cutler started all 16 games. They've never had a quarterback throw
My
for
guy.
They've never had a quarterback throw for 30 touchdowns in a season or 4,000 yards. And Caleb Williams, with the number one pick, he was the first FBS quarterback to throw for 30 plus touchdowns and run for 10 plus touchdowns in back-to-back seasons since Patrick Mahomes.
I was going to say Vince Young. I was about to say Vince Young right there.
Yeah, the arm talent is electric. It's comparable to Allen and Mahomes. Within structure, he's an efficient monster. Throws of 2.5 seconds or less in the pocket. He had an 82% completion rate with only 2 turnover-worthy throws. What gave him trouble was when he tried to do too much because he knew his D and his O-line were below average. What does that sound like? That sounds similar to Mahomes' final year at Texas Tech, where he tried to do too much, threw too many interceptions. The Bears bring in Shane Waldron, who was 8th in situation neutral pace. He had the 9th most seconds left on the play clock when they snapped the ball in Seattle. The problem with the Seahawks last year was they couldn't stay on the field on offense and they couldn't get off the field on defense. They had the 6th worst success rate on third downs, 21st in EPA on third down plays. The D was worse, 30th success rate allowed and 31st in third down conversion rate allowed. They were last in EPA allowed on third downs. So yeah, over the last 3 seasons, Justin Fields was 35th out of 38 quarterbacks in expected points lost from sacks, fumbles, and interceptions. His average time that he held onto the ball was 3.4 seconds. That was his average time. That number is beyond pathetic. If you dive deeper into the Bears O-line last year, they were top 5 with run block win rate and top 5 with pass block win rate. They had 29 holding penalties and gave up 50 sacks because of Fields' inability to make quick decisions. I think that improves this year with Caleb coming in town.
The hatred
Yeah.
for QB1.
Fields is terrible.
Wow. So, Williams, last week I said I was going to get a Fields jersey. This is how bad my stench is on the NFL. I ordered by the way, expensive as hell. So I had to get one from like Sri Lanka because I'm like, listen, I'm not spending $100 on a Justin Fields jersey, right? So I order a Justin Fields jersey to have shipped here. He then proceeds to fumble twice in a row, I think, in the game, and Tomlin hates him with a passion. And then the guy got back to me and said, yeah, I can't find the jersey. We have to cancel it. So that's basically the Justin Fields overview for my life right now. So, Justin, I love you, but you got to hold on to the ball, kid.
All right, listen, Jim, here's my suggestion to you to find a Justin Fields jersey again in the future. Go to Temu or Temu, however you want to pronounce it, right?
Yeah.
And search for Pittsburgh and then just Justin Fields number, right? Like that's what you search for, and then you'll see basically the jersey come up. They can't call it, a jersey, and they can't say Fields or Pittsburgh, but they can basically lead you there. So just as long as you say Fields' number and something about Steelers, you'll find one there on Temu, and it'll disintegrate in a little while, but at least you'll be able to tell people you had a Justin Fields jersey since you told people you were going to have one.
Yeah, they don't
Solutions,
even have
Jimmy.
it on Temu. They don't even have it on Temu. That's
Solutions, Jimmy. That's what I bring. All right. And you know what the Bears have this year? They have solutions. Okay. You can talk about Caleb Williams all you want, and that's fine. He does seem like a can't miss prospect. I think that people are sleeping on the fact that this is not like the Bears pick. I think the Bears tend to mess up their own pick. This was a pick that was just sort of given to them as like an extra prize on top of another trade that they did. So I think that somehow cancels out the bad Bears juju. So I do believe Caleb Williams could be good. But what I think people are sleeping on is the 3 wide receivers that he has on his team to be able to throw to as a rookie, right? That is the important part, I believe, for the Bears. He's got a guy like Keenan Allen, who's a veteran, right? He's got DJ Moore, who's also a veteran. And then he's got a young rookie speedster. Sounds to me like the perfect wide receiver room for a growing quarterback, a decent enough offensive coordinator, and then a great defense in Chicago. Maybe not Monsters in the Midway style, but the Bears DNA still exists. I think things are high in Chicago. I'm predicting the Bears shock the world and win the NFC North. Chris, how crazy am I?
You're certifiably insane, right? I mean, listen, let me preface this by saying I am not good at evaluating quarterbacks. I'm not. That being said, I also know the Bears aren't either.
Let's go.
So I
That's
don't
good.
have faith yet
You're
in what
fantastic.
Chicago can or can't do. I do know that Chicago has a history of great teams, but when they have those great teams that take them to a Super Bowl, it's not due to their offense, it's due to a generational type defense. And they don't have that this year. And I think they need that if they're going to have success. I think they're the third best team in this division.
So I think basically what Chris is saying there, Jimmy, is can the Bears call Kyle Orton and bring him back out of retirement to back up Caleb Williams? Because when Kyle Orton was the Bears' backup quarterback was the last time the Bears made it to the Super Bowl.
I think that's what we need for sure. Listen, Chris, I understand that everyone is young on this. The two big playmakers are young, but you can't be mean at young people all the time, dude. Like they're gonna be good. Listen, winning the division, I think it might be a little bit of a stretch. I have them second in the division. That could also be a
You
stretch.
scaredy cat. Let's go, Jimmy. Get aboard the train. Come on.
I am. Well, here's the thing: he who shall not be named, right guard for the Bears, who has done absolutely nothing for 2 years, really hurts. That offensive line scares the heck out of me, Williams.
Yeah, but I mean, getting back to the weapons, DJ Moore.
Yeah, but I don't care, Jim.
I'll get to it in a second. DJ Moore, top 5
going to bed.
yards
Good
per
night.
route run versus man. Keenan Allen, top 10 and yards per route run versus zone. I think when the pressure is on, I think Caleb's going to get the ball out quick to Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen's going to be the guy. And the Bears project, get this, the Bears project to face the easiest schedule of opposing pass defenses in the league. And they're spending the least amount of money at the quarterback position. They funneled that into top 10 spending rate at running back, wide receiver, tight end, and on the whole defense as a unit.
Sounds like a winner to me, boys. Let's go. The train's ready for you.
Yeah.
You guys are so scared. You guys are so scared. Fine. We already know who Chris is predicting to win this division. Jimmy said he thinks the Bears are second to who?
Packers.
Man, did you see how it killed Jimmy so much to say that? Williams, I'm going down to you in the lower box here. Who do you got winning the NFC North?
I think since the Lions retained Ben Johnson, they play 14 games out of 17 in a dome. I think this is the year that Detroit gets possibly to the Super Bowl. They're going to win the division. I think the Bears are going to slightly be ahead of Green Bay. That very interesting Week 18 game, Bears at Lambeau Field, could decide a playoff spot. I think they're both good enough to get in the playoffs, honestly.
Listen to that. See, you guys are warming up to me. Like, what's going to happen is I'm going to take off on the Bears train, and I'm going to be moving down the track, and you guys are going to have to grab your hobo bindles and run along and jump onto the freight car, all right? I'm not going to stop the train and let you on at a proper junction. You're going to have to get your physical fitness up and run onto the train and jump on board.
I'm definitely not jumping on that train.
You don't have a hobo bundle. Or bindle, excuse me. That's what your problem is.
I have the original hobo bindle. Thank you very much.
Jimmy, how about you? Is your hobo bindle stylish?
Yeah, I've got a nice pattern. It's stripes, red, crimson and cream stripes.
Of course it is.
So, yeah,
of course it is. All right, Williams, any last nuggets to get off the pod here before we close out the show?
Yeah, I don't know why the NFL schedule makers did this to the Bears, but they don't play any division games until week 11. I don't like that at all. And just one last shot at Fields here. He took 135 sacks in his first 3 years. The NFL hasn't seen that many sacks to start a career in nearly 40 years of football.
That is incredible. Also, I'm mad at myself for not answering Johnny Football to your question as well about a quarterback who threw multiple touchdowns and then ran for multiple touchdowns the last year before, or 2 years in a row. Johnny Football probably did that. I watched that Netflix documentary recently because I'd missed it when it first came out. Man, Johnny Football was up to some stuff.
Yeah, that was really poor judgment on the Browns. Very poor judgment.
Oh, those were the best parts, man. When his agent was just flat out going through the draft process and just like how bombed he was at the combine. Like that was the best part.
You mean the same Browns who now have another quarterback who has a very questionable history of decision making that you guys think is going to win that division?
And with that,
Browns?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. That, you know what though, Jim, you're right. That's a good place to end. Jimmy and Chris and I have a few things to talk about wrestling. So we will do that here in just a second. We will say goodbye to our guy Williams. We will be back at you next week. We'll be coming back on Wednesday next week. So be paying attention on this platform at around this time. Our 4 beautiful faces will be back here for you talking about football. The Olympics are over. Chris, Jimmy, and Williams are excited about that because I will not be able to open the podcast with any Olympics talk. You guys are lucky I didn't get to Tom Cruise in the closing ceremonies because we all know how much I love Tom Cruise, but that's for another time. Wrestling here in just a second.
Bears playoffs.
Goodbye, Internet.
And welcome back to the Yeah We Know podcast. We kicked Crippler out. Chris is in. Thank goodness. Crippler.
Thank goodness. Do we really want to go with thank goodness, Jim? I mean, is goodness really what we feel about Chris ready to come in here and yell at us
that
about
Rhea Ripley story? That Rhea Ripley story was a little weird, dude. He was like a little too happy. He needed to go be by himself for a little bit, I think.
It's true.
That person that you can't see but you can hear is Hot Rod. Rod is here with us as well, of course, and Chris King. Not too much to talk about because we already had a first half of the show, but I do want to talk about something here, Rod. You're wearing a John Cena hoodie. Let's do a little bit of future casting. Rod,
my favorite.
John Cena is going to be all over the WWE in 2025, something we've kind of forgotten about over the last couple of weeks. What's the plan that you have for John Cena?
Well, I mean, let's first dispatch with the whole, wouldn't it be great if Cena was evil for his end? We're just not going to go there, right? There's just no way that
I don't think he's going to. I don't.
Yeah. There's just no way that he's going to go evil on anybody. So like, let's just cut out any one of those, right? We've seen our guy Cody Rhodes with many of his matches recently where he's I have respect for you, you have respect for me. Let's just solve it in the ring. So we could do that. That'd be a certain great notch on Cody's resume, right? A win over John Cena at a major wrestling event. But that's not what I want to do. That's not what I want to do. What I think they're going to do with John Cena is I think Triple H is a guy who tells long-term stories. I think he wants to bring somebody up with this John Cena end. I think John Cena wants to bring somebody up with this end. I give you, Jimmy, Austin Theory. That's what I think we should do a story with. We've got the WrestleMania match. He lost to Austin Theory at a WrestleMania. Sure, he lost to Solo Sikoa, but Bloodline, come on. They've got so many other things to do. We don't need to bring John Cena back into the Bloodline. Give me Austin Theory. The man can sell. The man has charisma. He's got to hopefully be something. We've got so many plus 40 going on 50-year-old guys involved in the big storylines these days. We need Austin Theory. John Cena can bring him up.
See, I think Theory had a shot, Chris. I think he had a shot, and he's going to be this middling mid-carder for most of the rest of his career. Yeah, he'll get some championship matches here and there, but I don't see that happening, Chris.
No, what I would more prefer, if you're not going to, I mean, you could do something with Sikoa. I think Rod's right, though. I think with Solo right now, he has plenty of stuff to keep him busy. But you do something like if he's coming back soon, you have him come in as an enforcer for Pierce or whoever and put a stop to somebody like Bronson Reed or Braun Strowman from wreaking havoc across the backstage locker room and everywhere else. Have him come in as an enforcer. That's why he's still a good guy. He's still going to be a face, but he's actually able to go out and smash some heads in.
So I think you have to kind of build Cena up a little bit because he's been on a little bit of a losing streak here. So a Bronson Reed, him beating Bronson Reed would also elevate Reed a little bit, something like that. I was going to go there as well. But then you have your Braun Breaker. That is always somebody that he can feud with and elevate him more. Your not Walter, Gunther. Your Gunther as well. That's another
I worry
person.
About that one, though, Jim, because I don't know that they want to get to 17, right? Like, I don't know that they want to get to 17, and clearly we're going to see some Cena W's on the way out, and I just don't think they want to get to 17. Do you?
No, I don't think so either. I think Gunther would win that battle. I would have said Damian Priest would be someone good, but he's kind of going more face. Maybe that's somebody that they bring in to help, not in the new Judgment Day, but team, maybe.
What if my guy comes back from his hiatus of the Bronson Reed and he goes heel? What if my guy goes heel? Could we see the Visionary, the Revolutionary, the Monday Night Messiah? Could we see him and Cena feuding, or have they already had a bunch of matches?
I'm here every day, week in and week out for the past 5 years, and you come and go as you please. I mean, that writes itself. It does.
Exactly. Chris, I mean, I know you're not a huge Seth Rollins guy because you think I talk about him too much, but I think you talk about Drew McIntyre too much. So, I mean, que sera, sera.
Yeah, but I don't think you need a Rollins versus Cena rivalry. Like, if you're trying to have Cena bring somebody up, Rollins isn't that type of rivalry.
That's true.
Maybe that's the swan song on his way out or something like that, depending on if Rollins has a belt at that point in time or something like that.
You know what? They could bring, you know who they could bring up to the main roster after Royal Rumble? Joe Hendry might be someone they bring up to then and get the rub from Cena there. I just thought of that. That might be someone you could, because I think a Dragunov match would be kind of cool, just so random. But Joe Hendry he's already got a cult following.
Oh, he does.
He's coming out at the Rumble. He will be at the Royal Rumble. There's no question about it. Think of him and Cena maybe doing something together. That could be interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to see Cena in the ring with somebody who's a great tactician, right? Because Cena just isn't that anymore. So we got to get somebody who's going to be willing to play the match out with him. But I also think what we got to think about here is Chris is right. I do want to see somebody brought up, but I think we're going to see multiple Cena story arcs, right? Like I think we're going to see him be on a story arc where somebody gets lifted up. But then I think his swan song match, Chris, like you were saying, like when we really get to the end, when they bill it as the final match, I'd hope that's going to be against somebody who's got a huge name. You know what I mean? So like that's where I would see a Seth
Pete
Rollins
Dunne,
there.
if you will.
Oh, there we go.
No, I mean,
Jimmy, that's what you want to talk about next, isn't it? That's why you brought up Pete Dunne.
No, not at all.
Don't call him Butch.
No, don't. Do not call him Butch. Heel 101. I mean, it's eaten out of the palm of his hand. I love it. It's fantastic. One thing we do need to talk about too, because I know we are running short on time, mostly because the producer's family says it's time to go. But the Dominic Mysterio, Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, Damian Priest angle, my son has talked about it nonstop just from watching YouTube clips. Now, there's probably some couple obvious reasons why he's watching a lot of those YouTube clips, which is perfectly fine with everyone. But gold, Jerry.
It's because he too likes chicken tendies, right, Jimmy? That's why
gold.
Like chicken tendies.
I apparently he just blanks around and finds out, if you will, going back to the crippler. But I love everything about this. They're going to go right to the mixed tag like we talked about at Bash in Berlin. I think this is terrific, Rod. Chef's kiss to your namesake.
Yeah, it's a great time for that foursome there. And Liv Morgan, she's doing what she has to do, right? We've talked about it many times. She's not physically imposing as a Charlotte Flair, as a Nia Jax, as a Rhea Ripley, right? So she has to come up with other ways to be devious and seem like top of the card. And she does it every time, right? She does it every time. Shout out to her. And I think that the mixed tag team match is one thing. That's great. We're going to be able to tell the story there. What I wonder, Jim, is can we see Rhea Ripley pulling off something that only one other person in the history of the WWE has pulled off, and that would make her huge. And I believe, could we see Rhea Ripley become the Intercontinental Champion? Forget about the Women's Championship belt. Could we see Rhea Ripley be the Intercontinental Champion, or they just won't do intergender matches anymore?
I think that diminishes the women's division if we do that. Back when
didn't they already do that by wiping them out for a year?
Back when China did that, there was really, I mean, it was a divas division. There was no wrestling. China was she would have killed everyone, right? I want the women's division to continue to thrive. And if the women's championship or the world women's championship aren't the pinnacle, then you're doing something wrong. So that's got to be the pinnacle, I would think. So and two, I don't think they're going to do too many intergender matches.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's like you gotta. I get what you're saying, that like that hurts the women's division, but in my opinion, they already did something similar with Rhea's run that she was on the entire last year, where like anytime she wrestled somebody, it was just a complete walkover, and nobody ever challenged her, and the only reason she lost the belt is because she got hurt backstage. You know what I mean? Like They already kind of did that, in my opinion. But you're right. Everything you said is right, and that's why you were sort of the expert of this podcast. Like Williams is our football expert. You're the one people should really listen to on the wrestling show. I'm just speaking nonsense over here.
Hey, Chris, give me an old man take to end things.
Okay, it's not really an old man take because it's just another fan take, but like, let's give it up for LA Knight again. All right. We're at least,
Yeah.
I mean, I would have been a little bit more worried if Andrade had won that match against Escobar, but like, luckily we get Escobar. It's somebody LA Knight's handled before, so he should retain his title.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I was a little worried if it was going to be Andrade as well, because they're clearly trying to make Andrade something. I don't know how or what.
You wonder why.
Well, why do I like him? That's a mystery to the listeners.
I mean, you got to give it up. That was an exciting match between them, right?
He's incredible, dude. Every time,
right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal in the ring. Like, give me more every night. I'll watch him.
Let's go. More Mr. Charlotte Flair is what Chris is saying, and I, for one, agree with him, which doesn't happen very often on the wrestling show.
And with that, you've been listening to the Yeah We Know podcast, part of the More You Know's podcasting network. You're in the ring with the Crippler, Rod and Chris.
Shout out to Mark Allen.
Goodbye, Net. Yeah.